Okay. Hi, everybody. We are starting live here from my car. I'm taking a page from Chevy Samet from It's a Learning Life. I'm in the middle of a number of different things and errands today. So Yehudit, actually, she and I were messaging yesterday, and she told me that today was really her only day this week that she could come on and do this live, and this is something that she and I have been talking about for a while, and I squeezed her in, so I'm here coming on, and we're doing it from the car instead of from my office, saying hi to everybody, just waiting for her to come on. This topic of tokophobia is one that I've really, even as a medical professional, I haven't heard about. Really is not discussed very much during my OBGYN rotations, and it was really something that I personally first learned about, even with all of my work in the field as well. I just learned about when I was watching her stories. There was one of my friends actually pointed me to her page, and I watched how brave and how open and raw and honest she was about all of the different pieces that she was experiencing. And I reached out to her at that point. I think it was in October or October or November, and she and I had a little bit of a dialogue then, and she told me that she was coming to the States. Here she is, she's coming on right now. And we met in Manhattan, and it was really an honor to get to meet her in person, and here she is.
Hi.
I was just telling everybody about our little meeting in November when we met in Manhattan. And I am, I'm going to adjust here also a tiny bit. I'm honored to, this is something that you and I have talked a little bit about, bringing you on here and discussing this. Now I'm going to adjust my seat because let's see if we, there we go. This is super exciting. Okay. So without further ado, Yehudit.
Hi, everyone.
Why don't you just quickly introduce yourself? I mean, obviously I gave everybody a little bit of a bio, but introduce yourself and who you are and your passions, and then let's sort of just launch right into it.
Sounds good. So my name is Yehudit, but my Instagram handle is actually Judy the Foodie, which confuses a lot of people. They think I go by Judy, but I don't. I've had an Instagram blog since I got married, which was 5 years ago. And I love to blog about food and my adventures. And we made Aliyah 3.5 years ago, and I continued to blog about food. I've always been very passionate about art and creativity. When we made Aliyah, I became a UX designer, which is also a very creative field. And I've mostly, until the last year, used my Instagram platform to talk about food and events and like pretty things.
All things which I personally love as well. So I love following you for that too.
And that's definitely my passions and my hobbies. And I hope to start like an events business one day. But when I started to have some struggles, and I had this platform that I had already, people came to me for food, but I had this platform and I was like, I really feel like I can use this to make a difference, to speak up. And if people aren't interested in that, they can leave. And if they're interested, more people can come. So I started using my platform to talk about my husband's and mine struggles to starting a family, which has been quite a journey. We've gone through a lot of things. So we can like talk about all the different things that led to our journey.
Yeah. So, look, the fact that, first of all, it takes a certain kind of person to come out and be public about their journey and their struggles, and the fact that you have done such a beautiful job at really taking your followers through the daily life of someone who struggles with lots of different things. The mental illness, I shouldn't say mental illness, but really the mental health piece of it, and also the physical / medical piece of the infertility, I think is an incredible testament to the two of you and how you've wanted to share all of this to make people feel less alone. So I personally, because that's my passion as well, so I personally just want to thank you so much. And I know, and you and I've talked about this, that you get these messages all the time. But let me now sort of let's go back to the beginning and specifically talk about the tokophobia and from the beginning, sort of how this whole journey started.
Yeah, so my journey in general starts with tokophobia. So as I said, we've been married for 5 years now. And when we first got married, I had no interest in kids. Like we were young. My husband is younger than me, and he was in school. I was not ready to be a mom. I was like hoping for that feeling to come. I didn't have that. I'm not someone who grew up with like obsessed with dolls and wanted to be a mom and all that. So it really wasn't someone who grew up with that idea that I was going to be a mom one day. Like I knew I was, but not in that like, of course it's going to happen.
Which is very normal. Yes, like we hear all these stories. Oh, I've been playing with dolls and I've been imagining my wedding and my 5 kids and blah blah. But there are so many women who don't, and that's also a very typical experience. So yeah.
Which is actually what I think made it more shocking for me when I all of a sudden decided. But basically, we were making Aliyah. We knew when we got married that we were making Aliyah. We were living in New York. So we got married, and a year and a half later, we knew we were going to be making Aliyah. So like kids, again, weren't in our plan. My husband was graduating. So we made Aliyah. And then we started to talk about when we would have kids. And we're like, okay, within half a year of like settling in Israel, I think we'll start. And it was more like, we'll talk. Like, for me, I always thought, okay, like we'll talk about it. And then one day I did get that feeling all of a sudden, the same way I wanted to make Aliyah, the same way I wanted to marry my husband. That's how I am. I got this feeling like I'm ready to be a mom. I want to be a mom. And it was a very harsh reality wake up for me, because with that feeling came terror, not of being a mom and not of raising a child. Was very excited for that. It was about how you get a child, being pregnant and going into labor. On the same day, all of a sudden it hit me that like, I can't do that. Like, what am I talking about? Like, I have no interest in going through labor or pregnancy. And I hadn't realized that my whole life, every time I'd heard a story that about negative around pregnancy and labor, that I had like stored it away. And I'm someone who has a lot of anxiety. And I have other phobias, and I never realized how much it was burrowing into my subconscious. And I'm also someone who somehow only heard negative stories about pregnancy and labor. I had not heard many positive things. I heard about how people wish they would die, and they was 9 months of hell, and every woman has the right to their story, but that's what I heard, and that's the picture I picked up on. And I have a very, very low pain tolerance. So with the day I decided I want to be a mom, I was like, no way. And I was like, okay, it'll go away.
What will go away? Meaning you thought the fear would go away.
Yeah, I thought the fear would go away. I'm like, I just realized I want to be a mom. I've got time. Like, we have our kid, and we're talking about now 3 years ago is when I realized I wanted to be a mom, and I realized I had a fear. And I just was like, okay, it's a normal fear. It'll go away with time. And I would talk to people like casually about it, and they're like, yeah, you'll get over it. It'll be fine. And I didn't realize how deep that fear was until like every time we set a deadline or said we're going to try, like it never happened. I was like, no, I'm staying on birth control. Like, it's not happening. We're continuing. And I just kept having this fear. And then I got to a point where I understood that my fear was so deep and I was so different from everyone else. I felt really ashamed. I was like, this isn't normal. Every woman out there scared. Like, I hear other people and I hear them being scared of pregnancy, but they still do it. And they all got pregnant. All my friends were getting pregnant. And I was like, they were scared and they got over it. What's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get over it?
Right.
And I continuously tried to get over it, and it never worked. Thank God I have a very, very, very understanding husband who never.
And what does that mean? Can I ask, like, when you say you kept trying to get over it, like, what does that mean? What were you doing?
For us, it was like setting dates. We're like, okay, we're going to start trying now, which means getting off birth control for me. And then I would just be like, I'm not ready. Like, not yet. And I don't have a husband who at all ever would pressure me or say like, I need to have a kid already, whatever. So I never got to a point where I was like staring at the pill, like not like trying to throw it out and couldn't, because he never pressured me. Which is, I mean, I'm part of a support group, and that's not a guarantee that like you have a spouse that understands you.
Correct.
We could talk a little about that, but so basically I kept realizing that something was happening, but I didn't realize it was a thing. I thought it was something was wrong with me and I was broken, and that this is just how it's gonna be, and I'm never gonna get over it, and I'm different. There's nothing I could do about it. And along with this fear growing, my yearning to be a mother grew. So like I was at this point dying to be a mother. Like there was nothing else I wanted in the world. I would cry at night. I would cry like, why can't I have a kid? Why can't I be pregnant? And I just want to talk a little bit about what this fear is for me, why I was so scared of pregnancy and labor. I said I have a low pain tolerance. I also have major sensory issues. So something as simple as sound can really drive me insane. Like when I say insane, I mean really insane. Like I can hear sound and it can just go on, and I cannot sleep, and I'll deprive myself of sleep and stay awake. So I have a lot of sensory issues. Touch bothers me, like a tag that's annoying. So pregnancy, I mean, you can just assume like pregnancy is going to be really hard for someone like me. And it wasn't that I was just scared. I was scared of what I would do if I got pregnant, which is why I never let myself get to that point. I was scared of what I would do to myself, what I would do to the baby if I wanted to get rid of it. Because I was like, for me, it was always like, if I get pregnant, there's no stopping it. There's no rewinding it. There's no going back. There's only ending it. And in my mind, that was not an option. So I was not even willing to get pregnant because I was not a person who would want to end it. But that's what I saw would happen if I got pregnant, that I would want to end it. So it was like this catch-22, this like nightmare. Like I want to be pregnant. I want a child. I can't get pregnant because I don't know what I'll do with the pregnancy. And I'm not a person who's depressed or would ever want to have suicidal thoughts, but I was so scared of how the pain would affect me that I was like, if I knew that if I was in such a level of pain, I don't know if I'd want to be alive. And that is why I was preventing myself from getting pregnant and was never let myself get to that place. And that's why I call it a mental infertility, because everything with my being wanted to be a child, wanted to have a child.
Right.
And psychologically, my mind just did not let it happen, because it would show me on a repeat, like a movie, like all the nightmare things that would happen if I got pregnant. And I didn't really talk about this with anyone else besides my husband, because as you can imagine, it sounds like crazy. Like, what am I telling people? I'll want to kill the baby. Like, I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't find anyone to talk about. So I kind of kept it a secret, or I would try to bring it up casually with people, but people didn't get it because they would just assume it's like the normal anxiety around. There's normal anxiety around pregnancy. Problem is mine was extreme and harmful. But so people would assume it's that normal, and they'll be like, billions of women do it. You'll be fine. Like that's a classic line. Like everyone gets over it. They do it. And it's not something that helped me, because I was like, that's great that those millions of women did it, but did they have all the issues I had? Maybe, and maybe they could get over it, but I couldn't.
Right. And I want to just interject just for a second here. And I think what's important to say to everyone who's watching this is that tokophobia is a mental illness. This is something that is a real this is a real illness that exists, and it's just like anxiety, depression, OCD, all these other different kinds of mental illnesses. And when people say things like, when you say that you're anxious about something, or when someone casually says like, oh, I couldn't get out of bed today, I was so sad about X, Y, and Z. Now, for a typical person who does not have a mental illness, yes, we all go through these varying feelings of, some days we're happy, some days we're sad, some days we're in a good mood, some days we're in not a good mood. We're anxious about the test that's coming up because we want to make sure we get a good grade. We're anxious. Some people are anxious about flying, but they still get on a plane. But for people who have a mental illness, these illnesses make these specific items, these events, these ideas completely, absolutely off limits. Saying things like, don't worry about it. It's fine. You'll get over it. Everybody else gets over it. Or just get out of bed. Like, you already spent one day in bed. That's fine. All of these things that one says to an individual with a mental illness just really sort of takes away from the seriousness of what the disease is, and doesn't validate where they are, and really doesn't begin to understand what it's really about. So I want to just put, I know you're doing it already, but I want to just sort of couch it for everyone else that tokophobia is in the same category as all of these other illnesses.
Yeah. And what you said in terms of like people say those casual things, not only does it not help, it also makes us feel like, why can't we just get over it? Like we don't understand that we need help necessarily, because we think something's wrong with us. We think we're too broken for help. Right. Because we're just like, okay, I should just get over it like anything else. And it was actually randomly, I was talking to two friends. Again, they didn't understand, I don't think, the depth of my fear. But the next day she sent me an article that said, do you have tokophobia? And then it says an article, and I was like, what is this? And I opened it, and I was just like, oh my God, this is what I have. And I was just, the second I knew it had a name, I just felt this huge weight lift off of me. Not because maybe I'll become a mom or not, but just because it had a name. It had something, and I could deal with it now, and I could do something about it. Turns out that it's very unknown. It still didn't like give me a clear path of how to deal with it. But just having a name helped me figure out, like, research, find a support group on Facebook. That was life-changing. Post about it anonymously on, like, all these groups, like Jewish Women Talk About Anything and Ashes Chayil and all these groups. Because, like, before I couldn't post, because what would I post? Like, a whole long essay? Now I say I have tokophobia, a fear, a phobia, a pathological fear, and I could say, like, does anyone have experience with this? And it's actually how I had gotten connected to the therapist who ended up helping me. But before that, I actually had tried, the second I knew it had a name, I started trying countless things. I did EMDR, which is a kind of therapy that deals with your REM or something, but for me, it didn't work because it was something to do with trauma. And for me, this phobia wasn't something traumatic happened in my life, and it's the cause. Like, there wasn't a root cause, so it couldn't solve it.
Right.
So
EMDR, I just want to say also, EMDR is a specific form of therapy that has been shown to be extremely effective for people who have had trauma. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to interject.
Yeah. So I thought maybe there was trauma and I was burying it, but there wasn't. I tried biofeedback, I tried regular therapy, I tried CBT. CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. Yeah. It's also about that. The problem is with a lot of this is that a lot of things you need to try it out to like start working on it, but you can't try out pregnancy, which is where I had like a really hard time. I have another phobia, a dog phobia. And actually in Israel, it was pretty like it really like, what's the word? Like, it like crimped my life. No, it like
it crimped it
stopped me from living life.
It took away from part of your lifestyle. It hindered you.
Yeah, it hindered me because in Israel, for example, a lot of offices are dog friendly and they have dogs running around, which means I couldn't work in an office that had dog. My favorite place in the world is a beach, and people in Israel let their dogs run wild, so I like could not go to the beach without anxiety. When I saw a dog, and I like to explain my dog phobia in terms of phobia to try to get you to understand what tokophobia is. When I saw a dog, I thought in my head that it was going to eat me. Whether it was a Rottweiler or a Chihuahua, the images in my mind were the dog eating me alive and me like dying in pain. And that's why I couldn't, no matter how small the dog was, I could not go near a dog. I honestly thought it was going to eat me. So I had this idea that maybe if I worked on, maybe my phobias were connected, because neither one of them came from trauma. Also, I tried with EMDR to see if the dog phobia was from a trauma, and it wasn't. There was nothing that happened to like cause me. Just one day I decided to be scared of dogs. So I did exposure therapy for dogs, hoping that maybe it would help my brain like reprocess like things that it thought was bad were now not bad. And at the same time, as I mentioned, I found a therapist through one of these Jewish women's groups who actually specializes in tokophobia. She had tokophobia and had like managed to overcome it. And she practiced something called 3 principles. And it basically I don't really know what it does, but it works. It didn't work, but it basically was a way of thinking of life. Like, it's just a way of thinking, like, that situations, life, like, there's something about situations aren't, situations don't happen to you. There's just situations, and it's how your thoughts deal with them. And basically, I'm not a very spiritual, mindful person. Like, I don't do their, like meditation stuff. That doesn't work for me. Like, same reason why probably EMDR didn't work for me, because I couldn't like get to that other place. But I just stuck with her for 6 months. And it's, even though it costed me a lot of money, and I didn't know if it was going to work or not, I just stuck it out. I was like, this sounds like the only thing that's been helping me so far. I felt good talking to her. I felt like I could make progress. And I kept going with her. And at the same time, I was doing exposure therapy for dogs. So this is just a lot of times. And then I also tried, I tried other more holistic things. I was doing acupuncture every week. I was also, what was really important to me was starting to work out and eat really healthy so that my body would be extremely fit, because part of my fear was being too weak for pregnancy and being so in pain. So maybe if I was strong and healthy, then it wouldn't be so hard. So there was no path to healing from tokophobia. I had to try everything out. I had to spend my money with no guarantees. And that's why for me, in my head, the more and more I dealt with this, the more it was like, this is mental infertility. And because there's no guarantees, there's no one's promising you a baby at the end of this. I have to put in the work. I had to put in the money. But what was hard is that I actually didn't feel like I could find a place in the infertility world, because I was so nervous that I would get judged, being like, how dare you think you're infertile, when my body won't give me a baby. So I felt like I was part of the infertility world, yet I didn't feel like I could be welcome there. So I felt, even though I was getting the help I needed, I felt very alone still. Still couldn't talk to anyone about this. At this point, I was not public at all. I was doing this all by myself. Like, even the person who randomly sent me that article about tokophobia, like, I never told her, like, oh my God, I'm doing it. Like, I just was like, oh, wow, that sounds like me. And then I used that to advance my healing. So only my husband and I were dealing with this. And something that I never realized until like now, kind of, was just how much my husband was also basically going through this infertility, because he wanted to be a father, and he had to see his wife not be able to become, not willing to put her body through this, not willing in a bad way, just not able to put it. And he was committed to me. He was not just gonna go find someone else. And he had nothing to do but like hope that one day I would be healed. We are very open people, and we were very open to the idea of surrogate and adoption. But adoption, we're still trying to adopt and all that. But in terms of surrogacy, that was more of a last resort, like, meaning like I wanted to try and heal my body, my mind. I wanted to be the one to carry it, but we were very okay if we needed to take that route. Like, but it was like it's not an easy process at all, especially in Israel, and it's not a guarantee, but it was something that we were open to.
Look, it's absolutely incredible that he, look, you know, everyone has a different relationship with their spouse, but to, you know, to, as you say, like, it's not something that you discussed beforehand, before you got married, or even in the beginning stages of your marriage. And the fact that the two of you were able to work through this and to strengthen your relationship, I mean, is a real testament to your relationship, and is really, truly incredible.
What he said, he automatically accepted that if we didn't have a biological child, he was fine with that. He was like, you're my family, and what we need to do is what we need to do. He was hurting because I was hurting, and I wanted to be a mom. But to him, it was not like it has to be a biological child. And I see so many people in pain because like it's not necessarily always people are on the same page. And yeah, it's not. And I see also posts people say like, oh, should I tell my husband, the guy I'm dating, before I'm married about? And at the end of the day, you really don't know. Like, this is not something I could have ever thought would be a thing that I would have.
Right. I mean, what is interesting about tokophobia is that there are definitely people from, you know, whether it's because of trauma or some other kind of experience, or really for reasons that are unknown, they know from a younger age, or before they're married, they know that this is something that they're fearing. For you, it was very different, but there isn't one way to sort of be tokophobic. It can be something that comes on, or it could be something that you've known for a long time.
So there's actually primary and secondary tokophobia. Primary is what I have, where it's before you've ever had a child. And as you're saying, it could come from sexual trauma in your past, sexual abuse, being raped, all kinds of things. Like these can cause it. Or it can be from a trauma like being exposed to a birthing video at a very young age that was just so inappropriate for you to see. And of course, or in television entertainment, that's kind of what happened to me. It was all like burrowing in my mind, like the horrible, horrible scenes you see. And as I've gone on my path, I've understood that that's not necessarily at all what birthing and labor needs to be like, but that's what we're exposed to. And then there's also secondary infertility, which is having gone through
secondary tokophobia.
Secondary tokophobia, which is kind of the same thing as secondary, like having gone through a first child, and being a very traumatic incident, whether it being the pregnancy or the labor or something afterwards, maybe postpartum depression, and it's just causing you to not to the same feelings as primary, but to just not be able to do it again for a second or third, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now take us now. So you're going to therapy, you're doing acupuncture, you're doing all of these things. You're trying to keep your body as healthy as possible. Your husband, the two of you are this unit and working through this together. And now what? I mean, also, you also, I don't know if now is the time, but I also wanted to ask you about your job in relationship to tokophobia, and how they, as we move the story along.
So that has a lot, I haven't had an experience with, I
mean, pieces that you want to share.
So I had an experience. So basically I was working really hard and I got to a really, really, really positive place where my husband and I committed to a date that I was going to be stopping the pill. And for me, even things like being pregnant in the summer was something that I was like, I can't handle being pregnant in Israel in the summer. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get off the pill so that I won't be pregnant in the summer. And like, we had it planned out, like man plans, God laughs, whatever.
Always.
But, so we had a day that I was going to get off the pill, which means having a first mikvah night, having the first experience where basically we'd be trying. And this is kind of where like, it kind of is just a crazy story where like the highest, like I got to such a high point in my life. Like I made so much progress and then I was kind of like thrown a curveball. I had what I needed to do to deal with my tokophobia is not conventional. I have no path set out for me, like with IVF, you do this, you do this, you do this, you go to retrieval. Like there was no path, and I had to heal my mind in the only way I knew how, and I had tried a million things, and finally I was at a place where I thought I was healing and I was doing things. It ended up being that I did something that my work didn't like, and they thought was inappropriate for the, like in terms of work. I took what was supposed to be, I took a sick day as a mental health day, and they found out about it and they didn't accept my story about tokophobia. I told my entire I told my boss and everything about tokophobia and what I'd gone through for the last 3 years, and I ended up being let go because of tokophobia. Not going to go into any details about that, but ended up being that could have derailed my entire success, like my entire progress could have been derailed in that moment. And for the next few weeks I was so petrified. I was like I can't get pregnant now I have no job, and everything I had been starting to like be okay with was coming back. I was like, I have no job, and it's what am I going to do, and I'm going to get pregnant because I had just gone off the pill. But thank God, because I had worked so hard to get where I was, I didn't let it derail me. But in that scenario, someone else could have been thrown back 3 years, and all that work that they had done to get there could have been garbage. And it just, the point of that is to talk about the fact that mental health is just so not understood or accepted, which is just so sad in 2020. Like, yes. The fact that mental health is not put as high as physical health. If your mind doesn't work, your body doesn't, like, they're both just as important. Like, you can't have function with with one of them or the other. You need both. Right. And that's really kind of what set me on the path to being very public and vocal, because I was just like, how can things not be more understood in this day and age? And I was just, that started. But
Right.
basically,
Mental health, right? Mental health is what people term to be the invisible illness, because
yeah,
people don't see that there's anything wrong with you. They think that you're making it up. And I'm imagining, I mean, again, not going into the details, but that's a lot of times what, friends, family, workers, your boss, people can say like, oh, you don't really have these issues. What do you need to take a mental health day? And it's just,
yeah.
it's in today's day and age, it really should not be the case, but unfortunately it still is in some industries, and it's with some bosses. I mean, some
Yeah.
people are more receptive and some people are less receptive.
And what's part of what you're saying is also that because it's invisible, there are some mental illnesses, of course, that like there's not very clear, because like a doctor will try multiple things, but it's been done, and there are things that like can help them. So like depression and OCD, like there's more of a clear set path. But things like tokophobia, which are just coming to light, which until now, why it probably didn't come to light is because women never spoke up. They're probably way too ashamed to ever say anything, and all kinds of things like this that people are just coming to light. There's no clear path. So if I choose to do something to heal myself, it could look like whatever to you, but I'm doing it for not because this is like my nightmare. I'm not doing this to have fun, and it could look bad. And even when you tell someone it's just, people need to be more understanding of that. People don't know what to do to heal themselves necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when so that was the job piece. Now, you thought that it might trigger everything else and sort of set you back, but it didn't. And and then, so the next piece was you went off birth control, and then what?
And we were trying to get pregnant. The thing is, for me, like, we didn't come from a place that, okay, first month off, it's okay. Like, the first month already was devastating to me. And that's what I think people had a hard time with. Like, I talked to someone and be like, I'm not pregnant, I got my period. And they'll be like, you just started. And I'm like, no, I've been trying for 2.5 years. This is just because I'm physically trying does not. And that was really hard for people to get. So months went by and we didn't get pregnant. And as you can imagine, I was getting more and more stressed, and I was doing all the ovulations, and I was fine, and my blood tests were fine. We were good, and I was healthy. So I was like, what's going on? And I wanted to go see a doctor, but you have this whole thing about you have to wait a year or whatever. And I was like, I'm not waiting a year. I've already waited 2.5 years of my life. I'm not waiting. And I knew they wouldn't take me easily, because the women's tests are a lot more invasive or expensive. So we found out, and this is also a crazy story about how Hashem plans things. So I was going to acupuncture every week still, and obviously they say it helps with fertility. And I was telling him it's been months, and like I think it was like 6 or 7 months, and it's been months, and I was still not working. And he's like, just have your husband tested, because sometimes it could be the man, and if it's the man, it takes 3 months for sperm to regenerate, to regenerate. And he said it in a casual way, and I was like, okay, that's a great idea. And I was like, do you know how you could do it? He's like, your GP can refer you to do it. And I was like, great. So I told Batsal, my husband, I was like, just go to the GP and ask him for a referral. In Israel, like, you go to your doctor, you get probably the same thing. You get a referral for a test, you go do the test. And the GP was like, okay, I think you're a little crazy, but your wife wants you to do it. We'll do it. And it was very simple, and he did it. And then we got the results mailed to us, not even to the doctor. It was mailed to us 2 weeks later. And we opened it up. We were like totally casual, thought it was going to be fine. And we start looking at the numbers and the variable, and every single number was like bad. And because they tell you what's like the average. And we're like, wait, what? And we're like, what does this mean? And we're like, the morphology was 0, the low motility, the low sperm count. And I'm saying everything with permission. Everyone, like, we're very vocal about our story. And it was just like a slap in the face. I was just like, are you? And like, I looked it up, and I was very instantly aware of when you're talking about male infertility, you're talking about basically going straight to IVF. Like, there's no beating around the bush. It's not like women's infertility where you could try all kinds of things. Like, and I was just like flabbergasted. But I don't think processed any of it really because I know I processed it very recently, but I didn't really process any of it because I was just like, I dealt with tokophobia. I can deal with this. We're getting a child. Like, I was very much weak. This is not stopping us. But you have a medical system that is stopping you. So we immediately called the fertility clinic, and like somehow my story doesn't make sense because I hear other people and they wait months for appointments or whatever. Somehow we got an appointment within 2 weeks with a fertility specialist who was recommended, and we showed her the results and she was like, yeah, that's straight to IVF. You have to, but then she told us a list of things you need to do first, like you have to take another one just to make sure, and then I had to get tested to make sure I had nothing. So we started all of that. So, and for male infertility, there is some possibility that it's not like permanent, that there's like, or that's not unexplained. There are 3 tests that you do. I don't know if you need me, do you want me to talk about that a little bit?
Not here, just because I want to sort of gloss over this and sort of.
So
go ahead,
we knew it was like more of a permanent, we found out it's a permanent thing. It's not going away. There's nothing we could do to really fix it. We continued with tests. And one of the last tests I did was AMH. Which I don't really know what it is, but I know it's not good. It's like it's
the anti-mullerian hormone. It's a test that determines sort of it's Batsheva. Dr. Lerner Maslow was talking about. It's not a great way to test, but it sort of gives an indication as to where the woman's ovarian reserve, sort of where it's holding.
Yeah. So I had done my FSH and I knew it was pretty high, and I was like, okay. So the doctor was like, okay, because she didn't send me originally for an AMH, and she sent me for the AMH, and that came back low. So another slap in the face was like, not only did you do tokophobia and IVF, but you also have diminished ovarian reserve. And I'm 28, and basically what they told me was basically your eggs are like you're kind of 40. So while IVF can actually really be the answer for male infertility, it is not the answer for DOR, and it's kind of, there is nothing. Like you basically, until your eggs run out or until your eggs stop being produced, you just have to hope. But we basically got sent for IVF then. And that's when we decided to go public, at this point where we're like, okay, this is enough things that we've dealt with. We're dealing with so much. And I felt so alone. I was like, I just got into tokophobia. I was so alone in that. There's no way there's not people who talk about this, but I don't know anyone who does. I found out afterwards that there were a lot of people in my community who does, but for some reason it wasn't talked about. And I guess I wasn't friends with the people who were the friends with the people. And like, I just didn't know about it. And I decided we were going to go public, especially because it was male infertility and people are so ashamed about that. Yep. And my husband had no shame in it. He did not for 1 second think it meant that he wasn't a man, which makes me so sad that men think that. And like the fact that like there was never blame between us, like your fault, my fault, that we're like, and I hear that and it's so sad, and it never gets, even when we're really angry and upset, that is not something that ever gets thrown around. It's not something we believe or think, because there's no blame in this. Like, how could any of us known what we were going to have to gone through to get here? But yeah.
Amazing. I think that's, I mean, it's a real testament to the two of you, and again, the strength of your relationship, because you're exactly right that it's this, you know, when one person gets a diagnosis and then the other person sort of has to sit and wait, or the other person gets a I mean, there often is a tremendous amount of blame, of shame, of privacy, of it creates it really creates sometimes a real chasm in the relationship. And it's just to hear the two of you, and because I've been watching your stories for such a long time already, so I know that this is the case, but to hear the two of you about how you didn't use this to sort of drive that wedge, you used it instead to bring the two of you together, is a real, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a real testament to the way, you know, we hope all of our relationships are.
Yeah.
So I guess, look, we're at around the 40-minute mark, and so I just want to be conscious of time, and I try to keep these sort of in decent chunks so that it's easy for people to listen to afterwards. I guess, you know, look, people can, I know that you've been extremely open about your journey from the beginning, from tokophobia through you know, the male infertility, diminished ovarian reserve, and then the IVF process. And people can go on your page and they can listen to the different highlights where you talk about different pieces and all of the different emotions and circumstances that you've been through before and even now. And what I do want to say is that Yehudit is now pregnant. So for people who that might be a trigger for them. Just please know this as you get onto her page, that she is now pregnant, and bisha'a tova for everything, and everybody should just be healthy. But sort of as we're closing here, what, for someone who is dealing with tokophobia, who maybe now, I mean, you saw, and I also have a number of other messages of people who, said, oh my gosh, I think this is me. And also the realization that you came to when your friend, sent you that article in the paper. What is your advice to them?
My advice with tokophobia is that if one thing doesn't work, that doesn't mean you're not going to be able to be fixed, or you're not broken. That's the first thing. You're not broken. You have something, whether it's a chemical imbalance or it's, I don't know where, at least, I don't know what, I'm not a mental health person, so I don't really know how the brain works. But whatever it is, it's something that can be worked on, and it can be overcome fully. It could be gotten to a place where you can deal with it enough to do what your heart desires. And it's also something to not be ashamed of. And I think that's the hardest thing and the most important things, because the second you let shame come into it, it just takes you down even more. And there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like, you are a strong woman who's fighting for what she wants. And if what you want also is not to have kids, that's also 100% your choice. That also is a thing. But if what you want is a kid, that dream is attainable. And I see that people say that they've tried therapy and it's not working. Change therapists. I do say to give each kind of therapy at least a few. I know it's expensive and it's hard and it's really frustrating that you have to pay for all these things mostly out of pocket in Israel and in America, I assume. But to give like each kind of therapy a try. But if it doesn't work, try something else. Don't give up. My path, what I said, I did acupuncture and health. No one told me to do that. No one told me to get massages, but I knew you had to become attuned to yourself and what your needs are. Don't listen to the outside world and what they're telling you. Listen to your body, listen to yourself. If you have a fear of pain, deal with that. If you have sensory issues, deal with that. Know yourself and find something that works for you. And know that there are other options. I know this is not for every woman. I know a lot of people want biological children. But there are other options there. You can be a surrogate, you can have a surrogate, you can adopt. There are other ways to becoming a mom. But if your dream is to become a mom, like a mom with a biological child, just fight for it. Really, just never give up. No matter how many years it takes. My journey took around 3 years, and it's not over. I still have to deal with it now that as she mentioned, I'm pregnant. I still have to deal with it. It didn't just go away because I was ready to get pregnant. I still have to deal with it. I had a very traumatizing hospital stay a few days ago that really triggered my tokophobia, but I fought through it because I have something to fight for now, which is a lot easier, which I knew I had a feeling was going to be easier before I ever got pregnant. And I knew I wanted to be a mom. I never had that feeling of like motherhood, so I didn't know like what I was fighting for, which is why it was a lot harder. Now that I'm pregnant, dealing with tokophobia has become easier because I'm fighting for the child that I love, that I've done so much to get to her, towards her. But before you ever become pregnant, it's not something like you hear about mother love, you talk about it, you don't understand it. I don't understand it because I'm not a mom yet, like I'm not or the baby yet, but that's what makes it, dealing with tokophobia, so hard. But really just try so many things. Join support groups. There's a tokophobia support network on Facebook, it's called. I found that very, very helpful. There are all kinds of ranges of tokophobia. There are people who have tokophobia who can't have sex. They just can never have, they're married and they have spouses and they can't, because that to them, like, that's just too risky. So there are different levels of tokophobia, and there's ways to overcome each of them. And I've seen people who've been at the most panic-stricken like phase where they cannot have relationship with their husband to now have a child. And I think being part of a support group really, really can help you. And I think also finding a therapist who doesn't not only doesn't belittle you, of course, that's from a therapist, but who could
Right.
also understand, who won't put her, like if you decide you want to have an elective C-section, because that's what you need to do. For example, like before I got pregnant, my plan was I was going to have an elective C-section if I ever got pregnant, because that's something I could control and that's something I could do.
Yes.
First of all, find a therapist who would never, I had a therapist who said like, oh, but C-sections are bad. Didn't go back to that therapist ever again, because that's not what I needed to hear.
Yep.
And I also don't surround myself with people like that who tell me, who would give me their opinion and be judgmental about the choices I need to make. What I say at the end of the day is healthy, like mom, if you want to be a healthy woman, is healthy mind. Like do whatever you need to do to heal yourself. Don't listen to judgment. Don't listen to other people. Just do what you need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yehudit, thank you so much. This is so important for so many people. You are doing so much good by being out there and being open and honest. I know that you're open, that if anyone wants to contact you, they can DM you personally, they can DM me, and I can ask the questions if they don't want to reach out to you personally themselves. But thank you so much. You should continue to have a healthy pregnancy, and you yourself should feel healthy, and just continue to do what you're doing to bring light to things that people are not talking about, so all of us can feel more supported. Thank you.
I just want to say, for anyone who comes to my page, everything I talk about related to infertility gets highlighted. So you don't even have to reach out to me if you don't want to. If you're not comfortable, just come to my page, check out my highlights. For example, IVF, I talk about every detail about IVF, from every shot to everything, just so that someone who's about to go through it can get an understanding. It's all in my highlights. Definitely check it out. And if you do want to talk to me, I keep everything obviously anonymous. So really feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help anyone who wants.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And just to let everyone know, so this will be saved obviously for 24 hours here, and then it'll go up onto my YouTube channel, and you can watch it at any time. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.